Sophia Reed had never imagined that a regular day at work would change her life forever. As a hardworking delivery driver, she didn't have a law degree, but she possessed a sharp mind and an impressive knowledge of legal matters. When she got stuck in an elevator with Ethan Caldwell, the powerful CEO of a prestigious law firm, a sudden debate opened a door that Sophia had never dreamed of walking through. But could she survive in this cutthroat world where enemies were always lurking? And what would happen when work and love began to intertwine? The blue delivery truck zipped through the busy streets of New York, weaving through the hurried crowd on the sidewalks. Sophia, a delivery driver for Metro Swift Couriers, checked the address on the package, sighing to herself. She was all too familiar with these hectic mornings, delivering letters, documents, and goods from one place to another, all just to make enough to get by. Stopping in front of a skyscraper on Park Avenue, she quickly pressed the elevator button, carefully holding a bundle of important client documents. She knew this was one of the most prestigious law firms in the city, home to some of the sharpest minds in the business, deciding the fate of millions of dollars in each lawsuit. But she wasn't concerned with that. Her job was simply to deliver on time. Nothing more, nothing less. As the elevator doors opened, Sophia stepped in along with a few other people. Just as the doors were about to close, a tall man in an expensive gray suit stepped inside. No one spoke, but the atmosphere in the elevator seemed to shift immediately. Just a few floors from their destination, the elevator suddenly jolted slightly before coming to a complete stop. The lights flickered briefly before the emergency system kicked in, casting a soft yellow glow. A voice came over the intercom. "The elevator is experiencing technical difficulties. Please remain calm. We are addressing the issue." Murmurs filled the air. A middle-aged man nervously pressed the help button repeatedly, while a young woman sighed in worry. But what caught Sophia's attention was a shorter man standing in the corner of the elevator, looking visibly uncomfortable. "I have an important meeting," the shorter man said, irritated. "If this drags on, I'll sue this building for failing to maintain the elevator system properly. Clearly, this is negligence, which could endanger us." Sophia looked up at him, then over at the man in the gray suit. She realized it was Ethan Caldwell, the CEO of Caldwell and Partners. He stood quietly, observing the situation with a calm demeanor. But when their eyes met, he noticed something different about Sophia, an uncommon confidence for a delivery driver. She spoke clearly and calmly. "According to Section 5, Clause 3 of the Building Safety Law, the building owner is only liable if there's evidence showing they intentionally neglected maintenance or violated safety inspection regulations. In this case, the elevator stopped following the proper emergency protocol, and the support system is functioning, which means they followed the required procedure. A lawsuit wouldn't have any grounds." Everyone turned to look at her. The shorter man opened his mouth to retort but hesitated, unable to find a counter-argument. Ethan looked at Sophia, intrigued. "Do you study law?" he asked, his voice deep but curious. Sophia shook her head. "No, I just read a lot." Ethan paused for a moment, as if considering something. Finally, the elevator doors opened, releasing everyone from the cramped space. But as Sophia was about to step out, Ethan lightly touched her elbow, causing her to stop. "If you have time, I'd like to invite you to my office," Ethan said. "I think we have something interesting to discuss." Sophia was slightly taken aback. "About what?" "About your future," Ethan replied, a small smile crossing his face. Sophia thought for a moment. This could be an opportunity or a trap. But she wasn't the type to back away from the unknown. "Okay," she said, following Ethan into a world she never thought she would belong to. Sophia Reed never imagined she would work at a prestigious law firm like Caldwell and Partners. When Ethan Caldwell, the CEO of the firm, offered her a job, she hesitated. But after a restless night of thinking, she decided to give it a try. This wasn't just a life-changing opportunity. It was also a chance to prove that talent doesn't always come with a prestigious degree. However, Sophia quickly realized that the legal world wasn't just about expensive suits and sharp arguments. It was a ruthless battlefield. On her first day at Caldwell and Partners, she immediately felt the weight of the pressure. Curious, skeptical eyes followed her as she walked through the marble-floored hallway. To many, she was just a delivery driver who had suddenly secured a position that countless people coveted. Ethan introduced her to the staff. "This is Sophia Reed, our new legal assistant. She has an incredible knowledge of law, and I believe she will be a valuable asset to the company." Some people nodded politely, but no one truly welcomed her, except for a young lawyer named Madeline Brooks, who immediately struck up a conversation and helped Sophia get acquainted with her new environment. But Sophia didn't have time to focus on the skeptical looks. She dove straight into her work, reviewing case files, assisting lawyers with drafting documents, and even offering sharp observations that surprised even the most experienced attorneys. However, not everyone was happy with her presence. Gregory Lawson, a senior lawyer at the firm, made his disdain for Sophia clear from the beginning. With over 15 years of experience, Gregory was one of the most powerful figures at Caldwell and Partners, and he didn't like the idea of an outsider like Sophia stepping in without a formal degree. One afternoon, while reviewing a labor rights lawsuit against a major corporation, Sophia noticed a significant flaw in the opposing party's argument. Excited, she rushed to the conference room where Gregory and the senior legal team were discussing the case. "Excuse me, I have something to add," she said, her voice confident. Gregory raised an eyebrow. "What do you think you've discovered?" Sophia didn't flinch. "I noticed that the plaintiff cited Clause 12 of the contract. But based on the precedent in the Thompson versus Albright case, the court dismissed a similar clause for lack of clarity. If we present this argument, we could potentially invalidate their entire case." The room fell silent for a few seconds. Some of the lawyers exchanged glances while Gregory crossed his arms, his gaze icy. Ethan was the first to speak. "This is a very important point. We should reconsider our strategy." Gregory clenched his jaw, but couldn't deny that Sophia was right. From that day on, he started seeing her as a threat. Noticing that Sophia was gradually gaining recognition, Gregory decided to take action. He started by assigning her difficult tasks, hoping she would make mistakes. But not only did Sophia remain unshaken, she excelled at every challenge. Undeterred, Gregory switched tactics. In a high-profile case, he deliberately hid an important document to hinder Sophia. It was an internal memo containing evidence favorable to their client. Just before the trial began, Sophia noticed the document was missing. She immediately searched the company's system and discovered that Gregory had marked it as irrelevant. Without wasting time, she quickly brought the issue to Ethan. During the trial, Ethan stood before the jury and presented the document that Sophia had retrieved, leaving the opposing side scrambling. The result was a victory for the firm, and the client was extremely grateful. After the trial, Ethan called Sophia into his office. "You did great," he said, using a more familiar tone for the first time. "I don't understand how Gregory thought he could pull one over on you." Sophia smiled softly. "I used to work in deliveries. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's finding things that are hidden." Ethan chuckled. "I think that's why I enjoy working with you." After months of working together, Sophia and Ethan grew increasingly close. Late nights at the office, heated debates over cases, and shared glances filled with mutual respect gradually built a deeper connection between them. Ethan began noticing Sophia, not just for her skills, but also for the strength and resilience beneath her simple exterior. One evening, as they stayed late working, Ethan brought 2 cups of coffee to Sophia's desk. "Have you ever thought about studying law formally?" he asked, his tone both curious and thoughtful. Sophia shook her head. "I like the law, but I'm not sure I want to be a lawyer. I just want to do what I'm good at." Ethan nodded. "I think you've already done more than some who have a degree." The atmosphere between them suddenly became still. When their eyes met, they both realized something was beginning to change. But before anything could move forward, Gregory appeared. "Well, this is touching," he said with a sarcastic tone. "But if I were you, Sophia, I'd be careful. There are people in this firm who don't like rapid promotions." Sophia understood that Gregory wasn't just referring to her career. He was also hinting at the growing closeness between her and Ethan. Undercurrents were beginning to form, and she knew that her biggest challenge was yet to come. While Sophia had gradually solidified her position at Caldwell and Partners, not everyone was pleased with her success. Gregory Lawson became even more ruthless, especially as Sophia started drawing more attention from Ethan. Their relationship was no longer just professional. The respect and admiration between them had slowly shifted into something unspoken. But at this moment, the real danger came from those she least expected. After months of working together, Sophia and Ethan had become a formidable team. Difficult cases no longer felt like a challenge. However, things changed when Gregory decided to strike back hard. During an important meeting about a major tech company lawsuit, Gregory intentionally spread false information to undermine Sophia in front of Ethan. He didn't just criticize her abilities, he planted doubts about the accuracy of her work. "I don't think she followed the proper procedure here," Gregory said, unabashed, right in front of everyone. "With all due respect, I believe she needs more experience before leading such a big case." Though this infuriated Sophia, she refused to be drawn into a personal battle. Instead, she remained composed and delivered a sharp rebuttal. "You may disagree, Gregory, but I've thoroughly checked all the documents, and I'm confident my argument is correct. If there's any mistake, I'll take full responsibility." Her voice was calm, yet filled with determination. Ethan stared at both of them, realizing that this was not about logic. It was a power struggle. After a few seconds of silence, he finally spoke up. "We'll continue discussing this issue, but I want to remind everyone that our goal is to win for our client. I trust in Sophia's abilities." In response to Ethan's public support, Sophia felt an unusual warmth in her heart. She knew that despite the many challenges ahead, as long as Ethan stood by her side, she would never falter. The next day, after everyone had left the office, Ethan called Sophia into his office. He looked at her seriously, but there was warmth in his eyes as well. "You did a great job," he said. "I never doubted your abilities, but you've proven that you can stand strong against any challenge." Sophia smiled. "Thank you, Ethan. I just do what I believe is right." Ethan stood up and walked toward her, his gaze turning more thoughtful. "But maybe you don't fully understand, Sophia. This isn't just about work. I trust you not just because of what you do here, but because of who you are." Sophia was taken aback, unsure of how to respond. Ethan's words made her feel like she was standing at a crossroads in her life. But before she could say anything, he stepped closer and gently took her hand. "Do you know what I'm feeling?" Ethan asked, his eyes locking with hers. Sophia was silent, her heart racing. She didn't know what to say. All her emotions became a whirlwind in her mind. But a part of her knew this feeling couldn't be denied. Just like their work, Sophia and Ethan's relationship had to go through trials. They not only had to face opposition from Gregory, but also endure the scrutiny of their colleagues at Caldwell and Partners. Whispers about their relationship started to circulate, creating an invisible pressure around them. However, both of them understood that they couldn't hide their feelings forever. One evening, as they were working late, Ethan took Sophia's hand and looked at her with a determined expression. "Would you like to have dinner with me?" he asked. "We could discuss the new case, without worrying about the company or curious eyes." Sophia smiled softly and nodded. "Sure. I think we could use some private time." During dinner, they didn't just talk about work. They shared stories about their lives, their dreams, and their hopes. Sophia's feelings grew stronger as she realized that love had been quietly blossoming inside her for quite some time, even though she hadn't fully acknowledged it. But Gregory wasn't done making things difficult. One October evening, after the company had just wrapped up an important case and things finally seemed to settle, Ethan unexpectedly appeared at Sophia's doorstep. "Could we take a walk?" he asked. Sophia looked at him in surprise, but agreed. The two of them walked through a nearby park, surrounded by peaceful silence. The only sounds were their footsteps under the soft glow of the streetlights. When they reached a quiet corner, Ethan stopped and turned to face Sophia. The dim light from a street lamp illuminated his face. "Sophia, I don't know how to say this, but I can't live without you." His voice was deep, filled with genuine emotion. "I love you. I love everything that you are." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She felt overwhelmed with emotion. Looking at Ethan, she saw nothing but sincerity and warmth in his eyes. Taking a deep breath, she whispered, "Ethan, I love you too." At that moment, Ethan knelt in front of her, opened a small box, and revealed a sparkling diamond ring. "Will you marry me, Sophia?" His voice was steady, but there was a deep vulnerability in his gaze. Every second seemed to stand still. Sophia could no longer hold back her emotions. Tears welled up in her eyes as she smiled. "Yes, I will marry you." Ethan's face lit up with pure joy. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood up, pulling her into a deep, heartfelt embrace. At that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the challenges, not the office politics, not Gregory's schemes. All that mattered was that they had found each other. But happily ever after wasn't going to come so easily. The next morning, the entire office buzzed with gossip. News of Ethan's public proposal had spread, and not everyone was happy about it. Gregory, in particular, was furious. During a team meeting, he made his resentment crystal clear. "I have nothing against office relationships," he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "But we should be careful that they don't interfere with professionalism. Some of us worked for years to earn our place here." Sophia knew exactly what he was implying. He wanted people to believe that she had only advanced in the company because of her relationship with Ethan. But Sophia refused to be shaken. Instead of reacting emotionally, she simply responded, "Professionalism should always come first, Gregory. That's why my work speaks for itself." Her calm, sharp response left the room silent. Gregory clenched his jaw, but there was nothing he could say. After the meeting, Ethan pulled Sophia aside. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She nodded. "I knew this was coming, but I won't let it get to me." Ethan smiled. "That's what I love about you." But deep down, Sophia knew that Gregory wasn't done yet. Something told her that the worst was yet to come. Despite the growing tension in the office, Sophia and Ethan remained unshaken. Their love had become a source of strength, pushing them forward even as whispers and judgment surrounded them. However, Gregory Lawson was far from finished. Behind the scenes, he was carefully playing his final move. He knew that a direct attack on Sophia had failed, so this time, he decided to go after Ethan himself. A week later, during an important client negotiation, Gregory made his first strike. "Mr. Caldwell, I think you should reconsider Sophia's involvement in this case," Gregory announced in front of the entire legal team. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And why is that?" Gregory smirked. "Given recent developments, I believe there may be a conflict of interest. If Sophia wins this case under your leadership, others might think she's receiving special treatment." A tense silence filled the room. Everyone knew what Gregory was implying. Ethan's expression remained calm, but there was a dangerous edge to his voice. "Are you suggesting that Sophia's work is anything less than exceptional?" Gregory leaned back in his chair. "Not at all. But appearances matter, don't they?" Sophia clenched her fists, but she knew that responding in anger would only play into Gregory's hands. Instead, she took a deep breath and let her work speak for itself. Over the next week, she put in twice the effort, ensuring that every legal argument was airtight, every document was flawless, and every strategy was unshakable. When the case finally went to trial, Sophia delivered a decisive victory for the firm. The client was ecstatic, praising her brilliant legal insight. Even the senior lawyers, who had once doubted her, were impressed. Ethan, standing beside her in the courtroom, gave her a proud, knowing look. Gregory, on the other hand, was visibly seething. His plan had backfired. But Gregory still had one more card to play. Late one evening, after most of the staff had left, Sophia received an anonymous email. The subject line sent a chill down her spine. "You don't belong here." The message contained a series of fabricated accusations against her, suggesting that she had been given confidential client information without authorization. Sophia's hands tightened around her mouse. This was Gregory's final move. He was trying to frame her, to ruin her career once and for all. Taking a deep breath, Sophia forwarded the email to Ethan. Within minutes, Ethan was in her office. His jaw was clenched, his eyes dark with fury. "We need to handle this carefully," he said. "Gregory is trying to trap you. If we don't expose him properly, he could use this against us." Sophia nodded. "I'm ready." They worked through the night, gathering proof that Gregory had been behind the false accusations. By morning, they had everything they needed. The next day, Ethan called for an emergency meeting. With the entire legal team present, he stood at the head of the conference table and placed printed copies of Gregory's fabricated emails in front of everyone. "I believe some of you have been misled," Ethan said, his voice dangerously calm. "It has come to my attention that false allegations were made against one of our finest legal minds, Sophia Reed." Murmurs rippled through the room. Gregory remained stone-faced, but his fingers tapped anxiously against the table. "We have traced these false claims back to their source," Ethan continued, "and I believe the person responsible owes us an explanation." All eyes turned to Gregory. For the first time, the smug confidence on his face shattered. He had been caught. A tense silence filled the room as Gregory Lawson sat frozen in his seat, realizing that he had been completely exposed. The documents Ethan had placed before the legal team contained undeniable proof. Emails traced back to Gregory's account, showing how he had fabricated evidence against Sophia in an attempt to ruin her career. "Would you like to explain yourself, Gregory?" Ethan's voice was calm, but the sharpness in his tone left no room for escape. Gregory opened his mouth, then closed it. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as he struggled to find a defense. This is ridiculous, he finally stammered. It's a misunderstanding. Someone must have accessed my account. Sophia watched him closely, seeing the once arrogant and untouchable lawyer reduced to a desperate man grasping at lies. A misunderstanding? Ethan repeated, raising an eyebrow. He flipped through the pages. Because according to these records, your login credentials were used to send every one of these emails. At what point exactly was your account hacked? Gregory's mouth tightened. He had no way out. The other senior lawyers exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. Gregory had been one of the firm's most respected figures, but now, in the span of just a few minutes, his entire reputation had come crashing down. Effective immediately, you are suspended from Caldwell and Partners, Ethan declared. An internal investigation will follow, and I strongly suggest you cooperate. If you're found guilty of misconduct, you'll be permanently disbarred. Gregory stood up so fast his chair scraped against the marble floor. His face was red with fury. This isn't over, Caldwell, he spat. Mark my words, you'll regret this. But Ethan simply gave him a cold, dismissive look. Get out. With his head low and his career in shambles, Gregory stormed out of the conference room. The moment the door shut behind him, a wave of relief washed over Sophia. For months, Gregory had tried to destroy her, but in the end, his own corruption had been his downfall. She turned to Ethan. Thank you for believing in me. He smiled. I always believed in you, Sophia. But you didn't need me to fight this battle for you. You won this on your own. The legal team, who had once doubted Sophia's abilities, now looked at her with a newfound respect. One of the senior attorneys, who had never spoken to her before, finally addressed her. I underestimated you, he admitted. You're an incredible lawyer, even without the degree. Sophia chuckled. I'm not a lawyer. I just know how to fight for the truth. Ethan's eyes softened as he looked at her, admiration clear in his gaze. And in that moment, she realized she had finally proven herself. Later that evening, as they stood in Ethan's office, overlooking the city skyline, Sophia let out a deep breath. I never imagined my life would turn out like this, she said softly. Ethan turned to her. And are you happy? She smiled, meeting his gaze. Yes, I am. He stepped closer, his voice quieter now. Then there's just one thing left. Sophia tilted her head in question. What's that? Ethan reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small, elegant envelope. He handed it to her. Curious, she opened it, and her eyes widened. It was an official acceptance letter from one of the top law schools in the country. Her name was on it. She looked up at Ethan, completely stunned. I never applied. He smiled. No, but someone who knows your talent did. The dean reviewed your work, and they were more than impressed. They're offering you a place on a full scholarship. Sophia's heart pounded. For years, she had worked from the outside, fighting battles without a title. Now, she was being given the chance to become the very thing she never thought she could be. A real lawyer. Tears welled in her eyes. Ethan, I don't know what to say. He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. Say yes. She looked down at the letter, then back up at him. And with a deep breath, she whispered, Yes! Sophia held the acceptance letter in her hands, her heart racing. She never imagined that one moment in a stuck elevator would lead her here, to a prestigious law school, a new future, and a love she never expected. Ethan watched her closely, his gaze filled with pride. You deserve this, Sophia. She let out a soft laugh, wiping away a tear. I never thought this was possible for me. He smiled. That's because you never saw yourself the way I do. You're brilliant, determined, and stronger than anyone I've ever met. And now, the world will see it too. Sophia looked at the letter one more time, feeling the weight of her journey, from being a simple delivery driver to standing at the doorstep of her dreams. She turned to Ethan, her expression shifting from surprise to certainty. I want this. And she meant it. In the months that followed, Sophia's life changed in ways she had never imagined. She officially enrolled in law school, balancing her studies with her work at Caldwell and Partners. Though she was no longer just an assistant, she remained part of the firm, gaining real-world experience while preparing for the next step in her career. Her journey wasn't easy. Law school was demanding, and the expectations were higher than ever. But Sophia thrived. Every time she felt like giving up, she reminded herself of how far she had come and the battle she had already won. Ethan was by her side through it all, supporting her in every way he could. And as for Gregory Lawson, after being disbarred, he disappeared from the legal world altogether. The man who once tried to destroy her was nothing more than a bitter memory now. Sophia had won, not just against him, but against every person who ever doubted her. 1 year later, the firm was busier than ever, handling some of the biggest legal cases in the country. But today was different. Today was Sophia's graduation day. She stood on stage, looking out at the crowd, wearing her cap and gown. When the dean called her name, she stepped forward to receive her diploma, a symbol of everything she had fought for. As she turned to leave the stage, she spotted Ethan in the audience. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, she knew this was just the beginning. That evening, Ethan surprised her with a private celebration. Just the two of them, a rooftop dinner under the city lights. So what's next for you, Miss Reed? He teased, raising his glass. Sophia grinned. Well, I hear there's a position opening up at Caldwell and Partners. Ethan chuckled. Is that so? She nodded. And I happen to know someone who could be perfect for the job. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Then I think we should make it official. Sophia smiled. As long as there's no special treatment, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan smirked. I wouldn't dream of it. They both laughed, but as the night went on, their conversation drifted from careers to the future. And then, just as the city skyline glowed around them, Ethan reached into his pocket. I have one more question for you, Sophia. Her heart skipped a beat as he pulled out a ring, the same one he had proposed with months ago. Marry me. Not as my legal partner. As my life partner. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. This was it. The moment she had never dared to dream of. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, Yes! 1,000 times yes! Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, and when he pulled her into his arms, the entire city seemed to disappear around them. Sophia Reed had once been a delivery driver, barely scraping by. Now she was a lawyer, a graduate, a woman who had beaten every odd stacked against her. And she was about to start a new life, with a man who believed in her when no one else did. Her story wasn't over. It was just the beginning.